Hi everyone, Petrik here. For today's video, it will be a recommendation video. So it's been a while since I did a list video for recommendations, and this time it will be a recommendation for favorite historical fiction. So this list will contain 5 favorite historical fiction series that I've read so far. Obviously, I think a lot of you will know that I haven't read as much historical fiction as I did for fantasy or sci-fi, but still, historical fiction is actually one of my favorite genre. So yeah, these are the top 5 historical fiction series that I've read so far. And the first one that I want to mention is the Troy trilogy by David Gemmell and also Stella Gemmell for the last book. The first book is Lord of the Silver Bow, and then the second one is Shield of Thunder, and then the third one, which is co-written with Stella Gemmell, is Fall of Kings. This is the third and final book in the Troy trilogy, and honestly, this Troy trilogy is a really great historical fiction series. This is the first time, this was the first time I read any books by David Gemmell. And yeah, I know that David Gemmell is known for his work on Rigante, but I decided to make Troy trilogy the first books by David Gemmell that I read because, well, first, I've heard a lot of great things about this trilogy, even though this isn't his most popular work. And also, I found these books on discount, a huge discounts on a book fair in my country, which is very rare. So yeah, I thought I might as well give this series a try, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. This is another retelling of the Trojan War, which to be honest has been done so many times, but this, well, I was still so entertained by this. I think David Gemmell's prose is really good for heroic tale, and this one definitely felt very heroic. And I love the battle between Achilles versus Hector in this trilogy. And also, David Gemmell's battle scenes were really engaging. There is a lot of things to love here. And I know that in the future, I will be reading more of Gemmell's work, for sure. The second series I want to recommend here is a duology. It's called the Arthurian Tales by Giles Kristian. The first book is Lancelot, and the second book is Camelot. The first book in particular, Lancelot, is a book that I recommended so frequently. I love this book so much. It is one of my favorite books of all time, and I think it's a fantastic standalone work. Yeah, this one is a standalone, and this one is kinda like a standalone spin-off. Lancelot was my first experience reading Giles Kristian's work, and I am absolutely blown away because his prose is so worth savoring. The prose in Lancelot is one of the most enchanting prose I've ever read, really, in any genre. Giles Kristian can write. And Giles Kristian has mentioned several times that he wrote this book based on how much he loved Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. And I remember Robin Carter, a reviewer that I know, he told me that this one book, Lancelot, is better, or at least on par with the Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. So because of that, I gave it a try, and yeah, he's not wrong on this. I think this one is really on par with the Warlord Chronicles. It's amazing. Whether you love historical fiction or not, whether you love Arthurian retelling or not, definitely give Lancelot a try, and if you love Lancelot, Camelot is a worthy spin-off sequel to it. Before Lancelot and Camelot, Giles Kristian has released quite a lot of books. I think it was 8 books. I haven't read any of them, and I have to fix that in the future. I really have to, because I really love both these books, especially again Lancelot. And then there's also Hellmouth, which is a novella, and it's incredible. And if you're reading Lancelot for the first time, I highly read every single word in this, including the acknowledgement, because it will give an extra depth to this book, and it is a very emotional one. Then the third series I want to recommend here is the one that I just mentioned earlier. It is the Warlord Chronicles trilogy by Bernard Cornwell. The first book is The Winter King, the second book is The Enemy of God, and then the third book is Excalibur. So I have to admit that this trilogy wasn't on my radar until I finished reading The Faithful and the Fallen Quartet by John Gwynne. As some of you may know already, John Gwynne is one of my favorite authors of all time. Because of how much I love The Faithful and the Fallen, I did an interview with John Gwynne, and back then I asked him, can you recommend me just one series? And he told me that he will recommend the Warlord Chronicles trilogy by Bernard Cornwell. That's how much he loved this series and this book, The Winter King. And immediately after I did that interview, I purchased this book, and well, I didn't regret it one bit, because this is absolutely incredible, especially the second and third book. I'm quite confident in saying that this is actually the best Arthurian retelling that I've read out of any medium. It's just so good. But the characterizations for Derval, Arthur, Lancelot, and so many more characters felt incredibly real. And if you know Bernard Cornwell, then you know that he did a lot of amazing battle scenes. I think Bernard Cornwell's writes really great dramatic scenes. And in my honest opinion, this trilogy is even better than the entire The Last Kingdom series, which I'm reading right now. I'm only 2 books away from finishing the entire series. a 13-book series, and in my opinion, this trilogy is better than the 13-book series. The Last Kingdom is great, but this one is simply better. On the number 2 spot on this list is the Conqueror series by Conn Iggulden. The first book is The Birth of an Empire, the second book is Lords of the Silver Bow, the third book is Bones of the Hills, the fourth book is The Empire of the Silver, and finally, the final one is called Conqueror. This series has everything I love about grimdark fantasy. Yeah, I know that this is not fantasy, but seriously, there is so much element in this series that's so similar to the stuff that you find in grimdark fantasy. And honestly, it kinda read like one. It's brutal, it's violent, and the battle scenes were incredible. And also, I'm simply amazed by how Conn Iggulden did the head-hopping narrative, because head-hopping, as I always say, is something that I usually don't click with, but somehow Iggulden managed to make every characters, the shift in perspective, were so easy to follow, and every characters were so well realized. There is coming-of-age element, there is morally great characters, there's just so much to love in Conqueror series, seriously. Genghis Khan is one of the most feared and well-known figure in history, and well, I just want to know more about him, and in return I also get to learn more about Subodai, his most terrifying general. Plus, a lot of epic fantasy stories are inspired by Genghis Khan and the Mongolian invasion. So in addition to an engaging and magnificent series, I also get to learn more about Mongolian history. And finally, the number 1 spot on this list, and this will not surprise many of you. If you have been following my channel or my Goodreads reviews, you will know that this belongs in my number 1 spot. It is The Cemetery of Forgotten Books by Carlos Ruiz Zafon. The first book is The Shadow of the Wind, the second book is The Angel's Game, the third book is The Prisoner of Heaven, and finally, the fourth and final book is The Labyrinth of the Spirits. I know that a lot of people who read this series stop reading after they finish reading the first book, The Shadow of the Wind, and I do understand that The Shadow of the Wind, well, it worked absolutely well as a standalone, but please, if you have read Shadow of the Wind, continue with the series. And if you don't like The Angel's Game or The Prisoner of Heaven as much as you did for The Shadow of the Wind, that's fair and understandable. But to me, the first 3 books, in my opinion, were equally amazing. But The Labyrinth of the Spirits is something truly special. It is a masterpiece, and it's superior compared to the first 3 books, but quite by far in my opinion. The reason why I keep on saying that you have to read all 4 books is because all 4 books in this series form an interweaving stories that's utterly brilliant and mesmerizing. I cannot emphasize how much I love this series, especially this book. Labyrinth of the Spirits is the best known SFF books that I've ever read in my life. Seriously, it is just so good. It's too good. And I will always be sad that Zafon has passed away. He was a true genius. His books will live in a lot of readers' hearts for a long time. And I haven't read any of his books beyond The Cemetery of Forgotten Books. I will definitely fix that in the future, but this one will definitely stick with me. This quartet will be something that I read over and over again in the future. Not gonna lie, one of the reasons why I'm making this video is because, well, City of Mist, the final translated work, which is a collection of short stories taking place in the same world as The Cemetery of Forgotten Books, is being released this week. And it is once again translated by Lucia Graves. Lucia Graves did a phenomenal job on Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and I cannot wait to read City of Mist as soon as possible. If you're a reader, whether you're a fan of the genre or not, please give this series a try. It is absolutely amazing. Do not just stop at The Shadow of the Wind. Read all 4 books in publication order. Oh yeah, that's the top 5 historical fiction series that I've read so far. And do you have any recommendation for me? Have you read any of the series I mentioned on this list? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye bye.